G'day and welcome to the Noob Spearo podcast. It's Shrek here, but you more importantly are a Spearo looking to get better at spearfishing, learn a bit along the way and probably have a few laughs with us. Now I'm not joined by Turbo today, it's a solo, me and Luke Potts over there in New Zealand, and we dig in deep into some tips to overcome some common stuff when you sort of in your first few years spearfishing. So we get some big tips from Luke. He's a former guest on the show, so you can go back to like episode 9 and listen to him. He's from New Zealand, so Aquatic Rehab TV's Luke Potts. He's a bloody character, and he's got a new video series that's available on Vimeo on demand, which we're going to chat a bit about at the end of the show today. And there's a discount code for you guys to listen to as well if you want to go in and purchase them. And I would thoroughly recommend it, but we'll talk about that a bit later. Before we get there, I want to go through a couple of reviews, shout outs to the community, and probably a bit of an idea about what's happening for Noob Spearo in 2018. Right, so we've got a second Stitcher review. We've only got 2 on there, guys, but I love the 2 of them. So this is the second one. Coastal Crust 92 says, improved my spearfishing dramatically. I love hearing the stories of veterans who have seen the dangerous side of spearfishing, like blackouts, shark attacks and injuries, and it's made me more aware with my own dive buddies. Some of the tips I have heard take a lifetime to acquire, and I think it's shaved years off my learning curve. Thanks, guys. All right, I've got a funny one here on the website. I don't know how for real this is, but anyway, Andy Alligator Arms Romano. Shrek and Turbo, you guys are asking the best possible questions to the world's best Spearos. Don't stop the great interviews or I will lose my shit. Thanks, Alligator Arms. He says, please give me a shout out because I'm telling all my dive buddies to buy your ebook or I will not dive with them anymore. So good on you, buddy. That's the way to do it. So you can find our ebook. If you just pump in 99 tips to get better at spearfishing in Google, you'll be able to find it on a platform you want to like reading books on. Right, next one. Latest review from Australia, Pecky762, ripper of a podcast, good, plenty of good humour, stories and helpful tips for all Spearos. Thanks, Pecky. Christian Morass on Facebook, watched your episodes and bought the book. Keep up the excellent work, guys. All right, down in Eden, New South Wales, at the end of January, from the 20th of January to the 28th of January this year, there's the 66th National Spearfishing Champions, proudly hosted by the South Coast Skin Divers and the Australian Underwater Federation. You can go to auf.com.au and check out all the details for that. But there's like a whole week of diving and socialising here in Australia, so check that out. No one asked me to do that shout out, but I thought a couple of guys might be interested in checking that out, learning a little bit more about it. All right, I dug into the New Zealand iTunes reviews. I hadn't seen them before, and I've had a whole lot pop up. So like some of these are probably pretty old, but Fishing Gal 92. I love the podcast. Great to listen to world champion spearfishers. Love the work you guys do. Can't wait to see more of it. We've got Jay Waiti, funny dudes and good interviewers and guests. Great. Really enjoy the New Zealand guests. Keep going. Someone says, awesome podcast with interesting guests and the hosts are always funny. Keep up the good work. Rangy Valance, loving your work, fellas. Great for any level of diver and interested to hear different preferences of some of the top Spearos, you know, like roller spear guns. We had Manny Bova, reel, float line, open and closed muzzles. I stumbled across these on YouTube one day and I have been working my way through them. Great when rigging gear or tinkering on the boat or just any time where I'd normally listen to the radio. Keep up the good work and I look forward to hearing more. So awesome. Cheers to that. Matty P. Yo, guys, how's it? I'm a NorCal freediver Spearo, and I can't say enough how stoked I am about your podcast. The depth of content along with the humour that is delivered is so solid. Always pumped when a new one comes out. An interview with Martin Stepaniak, the 13 times record holder and founder of FII, would be sick. I've taken his classes and can attest firsthand to the value of information and how he presents it. Either way, love the show heaps. Maholo Matty. So cheers, bro. That was a nice one. Chris Metcalf. So Chris is part of the North Cal sort of crew, and he's been talking with us a little bit about the abalone issues they're having over there in California at the moment. I believe the fishery's closed. Turbo's going to have some more information for that probably next episode. We recorded an episode with North Cal Underwater Hunters president, Matt Madison, and unfortunately the fishery's closed since then, so I believe. So Turbo's going to have more information for that in 2 weeks, but that's unfortunate. All right, just a quick tip. A lot of guys are listening to the podcast now. They find it on YouTube or wherever you find it. You might find the episodes on our website. It's often easier to listen to it on your mobile phone through a podcast app. Apple have got an app, it's just called Podcast. You can get it on Android as well, though, now. That's pretty popular. But Podcast Addict is pretty popular with our listeners. And also Stitcher. Stitcher's still pretty popular as well. So wherever you're listening, make it easy on yourself and subscribe on your podcast app. Leave a review wherever you find it if you like the show, and that will help us out plenty. All right, moving on. A lot of guys bought gear from spearfishing.com.au, the show sponsor, over the holidays. That sends them a clear message when you use our code that we're a worthwhile radio show to sponsor. So appreciate you guys using the code and saving a bit of money on gear. So like I said, go to spearfishing.com.au, use the code NoobSpearo to save $20 on every purchase over 200. But look, I really want to get into this episode with Luke Potts. So here are sort of an overview of the 5 tips. Just before we get into it, we're going to talk about breathing, a really smart practice called Grab a Spotter, hydration, tides, current, and some awesome info for improving your hunting techniques. Without too much more, I'm pretty happy to just get straight into this episode with Luke Potts from Aquatic Rehab TV. Let's hook in. G'day Noob Spearo community. Today I'm joined by Luke Potts for the second time around. If you pump in Luke Potts Noob Spearo, you can go back and listen to his first interview with us a long time ago. But recently Luke has released a pay-per-view spearfishing video series on Vimeo, and it's doing pretty well. He's got some fantastic information in there. So today we're going to do 5 tips to shorten or accelerate through your spearfishing learning curve. And so welcome to the show again, Luke.
How's it going?
Pretty good, mate. Pretty good. So what's happening over there in sunny old NZ?
Well, it is sunny at the moment, as you've probably seen. Temperatures are up. I don't know. I've been reading stuff that we're breaking record highs with the water temp and all sorts. I think the reason is because my sinuses have gone, so that's why the water's so nice and clean.
Murphy's Law.
Yeah. So I don't want to think about it really, but
All right.
I'm busy. I guess I have to stay at home and stay busy editing because this whole thing that I've put together is a pretty big hunk of work.
Cool. All right. It's a labour of love though. So look, let's hook into it. So you're the man behind Aquatic Rehab. So you've been spearfishing for a long time. How long have you been spearing, Luke? And how long have you been producing videos for people?
So I did a bit of spearfishing when I was quite young, and then I turned my back on it until I was about 20, 21. Now I'm 31.
Yeah.
So about 10 years, and I've been, commercial diving and filming the majority of it.
Yeah.
So filming for TV and also did a bit of work for Nat Geo and some spearfishing stores and things like that. And
a little bit like Noob Spearo, as you've sort of progressed, you've developed quite a big following of guys. They're always pestering you with questions about overcoming some of these obstacles you have when you start spearfishing, and you had your own obstacles when you got started. Let's talk a little bit about some of the problems that maybe you and I both encountered when we started, and perhaps some of the listeners are as well. So breath hold's one that we get emailed about a lot. Is that something you yourself get?
Breath hold isn't as big as I thought it was going to be. A lot of it is around shooting fish, to be honest.
Okay.
But I do still get quite a fair chunk of guys asking, how do you increase your breath hold? Or, these questions have obviously, I've been getting them for so long since I started producing on YouTube a few years ago. And it's got to the point where I'm like, well, I can answer these, and put something together to sort of just run through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And have it all in one place.
Okay, so that one of your episodes is just straight about, increasing your breath hold. One of the things I see with guys starting out is they just have a crack, they jump in the water and they have a go and see what they can do.
When I mean, before I ever started spearfishing, I was swimming along the bottoms of swimming pools, competing with my mates to see who could go the farthest. And I think, it's a part of being a bloke, but I mean, it leads to maybe some bad attitudes with spearfishing, because you start to take on techniques that probably aren't very smart. Is that kind of your experience?
I think as I've stressed quite a lot through the series, that over-breathing was quite it's massive. And I think it's almost guys that are sort of going on the internet and taking little bits from freedivers and things like that, where, there's this breathe up technique or rah-de-rah or a few good deep breaths, and then they're pushing out their, CO2 and basically bringing themselves closer to that shallow water blackout threshold. And, I think that's where quite a few of the problems are sort of stemming. And it's almost like, the freediving community, they've got a lot of, there's like safety divers left, right and centre, and these guys are like studying different types of diving and types of diving to relax your heart, which may be hyperventilating, and then other types of diving, types of breathing, that they do before the descent. And it's just, it's a real mix-up of information.
Yeah. All right, so flushing CO2, which is hyperventilation or over-breathing. So basically, like I've heard an explanation of hyperventilation. It's basically any type of breathing that's, outside of your normal, whether it's breathing faster to try and flush out the CO2. But why do we need to leave CO2 at normal levels or near normal levels when we're spearfishing?
Well, the first thing that guys have to realise is that CO2 is responsible for the urge to breathe. So your brain actually doesn't really have that many receptors geared towards how much oxygen you've got.
Yeah.
So you need CO2. So the thing is that a lot of guys are, you hyperventilate, overbreathe, and breathe, dive with a decreased amount of CO2. Your urge to breathe is pushed out further.
Yeah.
So you're closer to running out of available oxygen. And, on the ascent, after a long dive or chasing fish or whatever, that's when guys are switching off. And it's pretty horrible. It's almost like what I liken it to in the series as being anaesthetized.
Yeah.
You never knew that it happened.
Have you blacked out yourself?
No, I've never blacked out.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of blackouts.
Yeah.
I've seen quite strange ones too. Like I've seen brand new divers black out in pools.
Yeah.
Doing dynamics, and I've seen guys chasing fish in the tropics blacking out. And what I've almost found too is something quite interesting, is that some people almost have a tendency to go to blackout.
Yeah.
And another thing that we stress is that if you're that kind of person, you're obviously always going to be wanting to do one up, one down.
Yeah.
With all of your hunting, and I know that can be hard because some of our fish, like snapper for example, that's you snooping a stretch of coast solo. And, people, so I think that the more information's out there around all these little things, the better it is, really.
Yeah. I remember, Luke, when I started, I had a lot of background in the water and done the swimming pool dynamics by myself. And, I had a pretty good breath hold and done life-saving and a lot of surfing and stuff. I was pretty good in the water. And so when I went spearfishing, I could spear okay. Like I had enough breath hold. I mean, I'm not saying I was breaking any records or anything. But when I first went and met a freediving instructor and they taught me how to do a full breath, it was like a revelation. And when you know how to intentionally do a big full 3-stage breath, it's phenomenal. Like that just opens up your
it's a pretty big change.
Yeah, and you're relaxed. Yeah. You're like, wow, I'm actually relaxed when I'm diving instead of under some stress.
Yeah, that's right. So, and the relaxation is quite a massive thing too. So I kind of hit home on what is referred to as homeostasis. Basically, it refers to other body processes as well. But if you're breathing and just maintaining equilibrium with CO2 and O2, and then I train guys on a technique called the rate yourself relaxation technique.
Okay.
It's borrowed from, it actually comes from a few different schools of thought. It's kind of almost beginner meditation. They teach it in anger management as well.
Okay.
Which is quite a hard case. But the theory was that you don't really know where you're at on the water unless you rate yourself out of 10, thoughts and muscles. And then so what guys can do is go, oh, okay, all right, I'm working on my real limits, and I'm giving myself the best chance to increase my breath hold properly. And also, like what you say, like a proper inhale. And I give guys a couple of methods of 2-stage.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like basically just hitting home that how dangerous overbreathing actually is.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to get some footage. You've probably seen there's a bit of footage on YouTube from the States where a guy blacks out, and he's rescued by the guy with the GoPro.
Okay.
And he doesn't get his mask off early.
Yeah.
And this guy, it took quite a long time to come to. It's quite heavy footage to watch because I sit there and edit it.
Yeah.
And that really hit home too, and that kind of makes you think a bit more about it.
Yeah.
And I've been catching myself on ledges thinking about that now, and I'm kind of like, but it's part of it.
Okay.
It's part of what we do, so we have to, the more information that's out there,
So maybe you could sum up some of these breathing problems into a few big tips. What would you what's some sort of actionable tips these guys could take to improve their breath hold?
Well, actionable, like for the first tip for new guys that are sort of starting out and they want to improve, pretty much just what I said. Don't overbreathe.
Yep.
And maybe do a bit of research into what constitutes as overbreathing.
Okay.
And you're working on your real limits. Because I reckon that only a small amount of overbreathing could add quite a bit of time to a breath hold.
Okay.
So don't overbreathe.
Yeah. Far away. Second tip.
All right. So, and this is one that I'm visualizing a dive that I did about a week ago at the Mokes.
Okay.
And I 3 people got in the water. The kingies were quite deep, still a little bit cold. The snapper were quite deep as well. And everyone was doing a free-for-all. There was workups and things like that, and it was a free-for-all. And I knew where the fish were. I actually seen a really nice skingy, and I missed a good snapper, I'm going to admit. And I blame the tools. But and I'm dragging this out, but for a reason, it's grab a spotter. So instead of just one up, one down, you've all heard it before. Think about it in your head. Grab a spotter. If you just be selfish, if you want to get that fish, have the confidence of, you're not overbreathing, but you've got someone there on the surface. And what I did is I just yelled to the boat and I said, get X to come over here. And then I said, can you just spot me? And then you know that they're going to hang around, especially if you tell them. And it turns into a one up, one down. And then when you're down there, you just feel so much better.
Yeah.
Because and then again, that helps you working on your real limits because, some guys are, like I find sometimes that I'm leaving early now after seeing all this blackout footage. I'm like, it sort of rattles you a wee bit. But, grab a spotter and concentrate on hunting because that's what we're there for.
It's a funny tip, but like I know myself, like I seldom ask someone, come and watch me. Yeah. It's always more of like okay, we'll just hit the water and hope that everyone does the right thing, but it just doesn't happen. It's free for all, So I think there's a good thing in being intentional with getting a buddy and maybe this language, Come and spot me is...
Yeah, can I just say, can you spot me? Can you spot me on this dive? Because and then I know that I'm going to, and like some of this water where I'm trying to get onto good kingfish, there's deep water close by. And like some of these are like almost sheer ledges that go down to 70 meters or something.
Wow.
So you don't want to be running into trouble.
Yeah.
Because, good luck. So that's that. And that's, I hope that's something that guys can sort of latch onto and then, it sort of, prevents a bit of any funniness around it too. Like, I appreciate it. If someone said to me, can you please spot me? I'll be like, oh, yes, sweet as.
Yeah.
You got one guy down there, and then you've got another guy down there, and if any fish move through, you got more chance. And, if you're not, if you're good blokes, I don't use any other words.
Yeah,
you can share the fish with each other.
Yeah,
it's in some places it can be a selfish sport, and then in other places, like I've seen a bit of social media stuff come through where guys are like, teamwork, big teamwork.
Yeah.
I just got off Messenger to a guy who, the 3 guys on a drift in Indo for dogtooth. One guy has a gun, so everyone is just working for that goal.
Yeah.
So there's that, and building the series, something that I learned about quite a lot was staying hydrated. Is massive. Now, hopefully, a few of the new divers they obviously know about the Mammalian Dive Reflex, and the what happens to the body when that happens. So obviously, everyone knows that the heart rate slows down.
Well, hang on. Maybe we're assuming too much. Walk us through Mammalian Dive Reflex. Look, I think you and I probably have a good idea of it, but let's not assume anything. What is your kind of explanation of just the basics of what Mammalian Dive Reflex is?
The Mammalian Dive Reflex, essentially, firstly, the triggers of facial triggers are nerve endings that go into the cheeks, generally actually under where the mask is.
Yeah.
So a mask can affect it. Cold water on the face, basically, what the human body does is prepares to, or gives you a slower heart rate. So your heart rate drops by, 10 to 25%, depending on who you are.
Yeah.
In preparation for a breath hold. So that's a response to the cold water immersion, which is usually the strongest trigger. But there are other triggers, such as holding your breath or even looking at water for real experienced spearos.
Yeah.
And that's sort of why I stress associating calmness with the water.
Yeah.
To help that. Now, splenic contraction is another one. So your spleen actually produces more red blood cells so that you've got more available oxygen in the bloodstream.
Yep.
And blood shift, which is the other mega one. So you pull blood away from hypoxia-tolerant tissues into the core. And this is what's bringing me onto hydration, is that your kidneys actually think that you're overhydrated because of all that blood shifting into the core.
Yeah.
And that's why you pee 30 times when the Mammalian Dive Reflex starts coming on.
Yeah.
You'll pee and you'll be totally dehydrated and you'll just keep peeing. And that's the thing, is that it's your body thinking that it's overhydrated. It's not. So that's why we're, forcing, like I force myself to drink water and electrolytes on the boat.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm not thirsty. I don't feel thirsty, but I'm dehydrated. And what I learned making the How to Spearfish series was that 1% decrease in bodily fluids can decrease your breath hold by 10%.
Wow.
And 2% decrease in bodily fluids can decrease your breath hold by 20%.
Wow.
So that's massive. And that is the heart's trying to pump that thick blood around the body. And also there's other things like acids and build-ups and other things that go on.
Yeah.
But it's huge.
I was just thinking too, I've come home exhausted from, a day's diving, and it's probably more to do with the fact that I'm dehydrated rather than, actually exhausted. I mean, you do have a big day and you're tired, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I don't even wash my gear.
Yeah.
I just throw it in the garage and boom, I'm lucky if I have a shower and then just hit the bed, I'm out. And,
that's quite interesting because I just seen a post from, do you know Jesse Cripps on?
Yep. Jesse and Michael have been on the show.
Yeah. I just seen a post come on and it's them filleting, and she has a bit of a yarn. I can't remember the actual details, but she sort of says you don't see a lot of photos like this because, when divers get out of the water, you're filleting, your hands are slimy, you can't be bothered working with camera gear. I was thinking the same. It's a lot of guys are like, we want to see the background, we want to see the after. I'm like, after? I'm stuffed.
I think part of it's dehydration, though.
I think dehydration's probably.
I tell you
that and sunburn is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, heat stroke. But one of the other big causes of dehydration is you look in the bottom of the chili bin, the esky, the cooler, wherever you are in the world, and your water bottle is just caked in fish slime.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and you're just like,
I still drink it.
Do I want to have a drink of water? You've got to, first of all, you've got to open the thing, which there might be 4 or 5 straps. You're already tired from your dive. You got to reach through some ice and slime slurry to get hold of your shitty fish-smelling bottle of water and try and neck it down. You got
to peel a snapper row off the lid.
Yeah.
And
so What do you take like for staying hydrated? Do you take out like Gatorade or Powerade or some electrolyte rich type stuff, or is it more?
Yeah,
I
do take like electrolytes out. Sometimes like the sachets, and I'll just have a big thing of water and chuck it in there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like a good multivitamin for magnesium and stuff like that in the morning.
That's another thing for reducing your cramp too in your legs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And another cause of cramp is dehydration as well. So it's funny we're talking about this.
Yeah, yeah, and that's big. Like I know guys that suffer quite badly. Like you can see the calves cramping up and they're out of the water.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, normally just an electrolyte's all right, and I think it's just a matter of just taking when you get on the boat, force yourself to drink.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be dehydrated anyway, and then it's just and then because you don't want your heart working hard and all these problems happening when especially at 4 p.m. when you might be doing some deeper stuff.
Yeah. Tell you one thing I got into in China is they do like a hot fruit tea over here. And I was thinking, like, it's beautiful, man. It's sweet and hot. When the weather's cold, it's just wicked. When you're out doing a cold day's diving, you know, and there's no way I'm drinking a shitty frozen, slime-covered bottle of water. But if I had a hot electrolyte-rich, or even just a hot fruit cordial, maybe, you know, like that'll probably be the good. But you need a thermos for that. But that's probably pretty good.
Yeah. How cold's cold though?
Oh, we're lucky if we get over 10 every day at the moment, and it's minus at night, and we haven't even got into winter yet. So, but just like being out on a boat, you know, you're in your 5 mil wetsuit, doing your boaty duties, or you've just crawled in from a shore dive. It's pretty friggin' miserable. When you're shore diving, do you tie a water off to your float?
Yeah, well, I don't often do a lot of shore diving, but if I was, I'd probably, if I do a shorey, it's an hour or two, or maybe 3. I'd normally smack back a lot of water before I get in the water.
Okay.
As a ritual. If someone has a plat or something, then I definitely try to bring some out and drink it.
What's a plat? A float boat?
Yeah.
All right.
We call them plats in New Zealand.
It's just a Kiwi name, is it?
PLA. I don't know. That's just always what I thought they'd been called.
Thought just boat floats.
Yeah.
I've been away from my homeland for too long, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, then you can put your bits and pieces in there and then get a drink. But I just think that's I thought, and that's going to hit home when you actually realise how much it affects your breath hold.
Right. Yeah, that's a nice easy one. That's probably pretty good to work on, actually. So I like it. Guys, Spearing Magazine have joined the Noob Spearo podcast to bring this episode to you today. Now, Spearing Magazine they're the best spearfishing magazine in the world. I'm saying it. Turbo said it. Now you know it. And if you head over to Spearing Magazine, you can check out the team. They've got Jeremy Gamble, John Paul Castro, Sky Bailey, Christopher Landers. You have a look. There's some fantastic people they've got on staff, and that's why they produce the world's best spearfishing magazine. The photography is just popping. The stories are awesome. Turbo's been rejected several times, and that's how you know it's top quality. So head over to spearingmagazine.com. You can buy it. You can buy it at your local retailer in the US, or you can even get the digital subscription online. spearingmagazine.com. All right, let's move on. Like I know another drama guys have is hunting techniques, as you sort of talked about earlier, and like your Veterans Vault. We did a snapper snooping session in our original interview with you, and a lot of our listeners commented on how good that was, and they actually requested more spearfishing hunting techniques. So now in every episode we ask every guest, what's your spearfishing hunting technique? It's one of the most popular sections on our show. So I mean, and it's a big learning curve. A lot of guys have natural hunting ability. They have a good awareness about how animals respond to their presence, but underwater it's a different ballgame. There's a lot to learn, and so you've got like 2 or 3 videos just about hunting techniques. Is that right?
Yeah. So at this stage, I've got 2. There's a lot of info. Like the first one is techniques for spearfishing yellowtail kingfish, and the reason why I chose kingfish is because you can employ and modify these to hunt any pelagic on Earth.
Yeah.
You know, take these. It's just generic, and then I use snapper for the second one.
Yeah.
Because you've got the, you know, tricky reef fish doesn't tolerate anyone.
Yeah.
Total different style, but there's quite a lot of crossover too.
Yeah. So just quickly, the kingfish, what we call kingfish in Australia and New Zealand, they call yellowtail in America, because in America they call kingfish Spanish mackerel.
Oh yeah.
So yellowtail kingfish. Yeah, it's funny. Like I can see where you're going. There are lots of transferables for pelagics. So
and even the like a lot of it came from filming when I was full-time filming, and even like trying to get close to sharks and marlin. And I had a marlin come in using similar techniques, like you know, visual avoidance, posturing away from the fish, and so I've there's 42 odd minutes on there of stuff, but it's there was so much there to come out. I didn't actually realise.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems when you get started, like even if you're just shore based, is like understanding how tides interacting and feeding cycles of fish. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, kind of how you sort of started learning, I guess, about some of the feeding and resting behaviours of these fish?
It was kind of like a bit of an online consensus of sort of going in and trying to figure out things, and then you just start hearing about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, for your listeners that want to, you know, get ahead in spearfishing, I would definitely pay attention to tide and current and how that affects what the fish in the area are doing.
Yeah.
Because it's massive. Like, to the point where someone invites me out on a specific tide, if it's local, you know, I've done it so many times where it's been like, my local would be like an outgoing. There's an island that blocks the current. Incoming is just unreal. Sharks, kingfish, snapper on the pressure point. Obviously, when we talk about the pressure point, for new guys, we're talking about where the current meets the frontal edge of the reef.
Yeah.
The feeding behavior that happens in that zone for all species, and then the way that they all just leave almost instantly when it stops. So, and the thing is, and the reason why I say tides and current is because, you know, you've got locations where they both might affect each other, and there's some places where you're only drift diving, and so you could almost, you know, figure out your local terrain, ask some of the seasoned guys, and start to build a bit of a picture of what's happening in your local area. Because I know particularly in Aussie there was a lot of, like, I didn't spend a lot of time hunting underwater in Aussie, but when I did, I found it it was quite different. Like even sometimes, like the back end of the reefs where the current would leave, there'd be like different species in there that people were targeting and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's just something that I think that new guys really should pay attention to, and then to maximise their you know, their chances while they're hunting.
Okay, and like, I mean, another thing I think guys have is they don't have much idea of which technique to employ in which situation. So I was chatting with Jeremy Gamble this morning, the owner of Spearing Magazine over there in the States, and he loves this. He loves this technique. Well, I sort of labelled it Overwatch. He's kind of like he likes to hover off maybe 8 or 10 meters above above sort of the bottom. And then when he's honed in on what he wants to hunt, then he'll descend and use the terrain more like like he'll use the terrain to approach the fish. But then you've got other guys that swear by getting on the bottom and and waiting and not really moving much. Then there's guys that sort of like to coast along.
That's right.
I mean, different strokes for different folks, and by all means, you can use these techniques in different situations. But with the guys that are starting out, I mean, what sort of thing do you recommend to them? What's the most effective technique to employ generally?
So from my experience being in the water, don't act like a predator. I've got quite a massive emphasis on this in the series. Don't act like a predator, because fish haven't adapted to be wary of an animal that ignores them. Predators are quite upfront, and and I see a lot of like guys in videos and stuff like that bombing towards fish, and even though they still get fish, it's not ideal shot situations. It's not broadside, and it's not. It's quite it's direct predatory behavior. My biggest emphasis is, and like all of the techniques that you just mentioned before, you can do it either way. And I'm sure that these guys will be playing the game with the fish, if you know what I mean. But like for the kingfish, for example, visual avoidance, especially on big kingfish, posturing your body away from the fish, using the reef or the structure. So actually, like what I found is getting into the structure. So you see a couple of fish, ignore them, get into the structure, and then wait for them to come to you. And then you've got the shot opportunities where the fish is passing in front of the gun, as opposed to, getting a quartering away shot, which is, at a way further distance away. And then, just sort of working on that mindset, I think. I think the way that it came about for me was being a cameraman, because I needed the fish to come close, and then I'd get to go home and watch what was scaring them. And I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I can't do that. And then I think fish are very the ocean is a hungry place. And we get into like the whole. Obviously, I talk a lot about the lateral line senses of fish. Fish are massive on vibration in the water. That's like one of their primary senses. They want food, and kingies will come and visit you straight away. Snapper will come and visit a vibration. A well-concealed diver will be visited by a snapper. So, if you're not acting like a predator and you're piquing their curiosity, they're going to come up to you. And that's when you get good shot opportunities, and also good opportunities to make good footage as well. And then you're also associating the water with calmness again. You're not bombing and everything's not crazy. It's like, I think it's just a nice way to do it.
Cool. Yeah, I remember chatting with Kimmy Werner over there in Hawaii, and she was comparing hunting to like dating. Like meeting people in a nightclub. If you're just creeping someone out, you're going to scare them off. You got to
visually avoid them and posture away from them.
You've got to play the game a little bit. I think maybe if you're a girl, you do. If you're a guy, you can just be a straight predator. Ask Turbo. But anyway.
You can just descend down onto them.
Too far. But no, it is interesting. And it's one of those funny crossovers with spearfishing, because it's like on the surface, you're trying to enter this meditative, calm, sort of relaxed state. And then you descend. And you see fish, and your heart rate's just straight up. You're like, yes, I want to get one of those. I want to get one of those. I want to get one of those. And you've got to stay calm. You've got to keep avoiding them. And then when the moment presents itself, that's when you can celebrate. Once the
it's a contradiction. It's a total contradiction. You're teaching yourself to be calm when you're dumping adrenaline, and then it almost ruins it, because you're not. You're really, really calm, and you're almost trying to take everything for granted so you can stay really calm and not get too excited.
Cool.
That's when it's the most contradicting activity, because of buck fever. I get buck fever when I see good snapper. Like I just get one big shot of adrenaline. Particularly if I think that I can close the gap. And that's something I've learned to like push out of the way, and it's I reckon the only way to do it is through practicing it. But I wish I knew about it earlier. I wish I knew that there was this way to do things, rather than just having to go out and watch good fish swim away. Now, the other thing about like acting like a predator is the fact that, not acting like a predator, is sometimes you'll have fish come in, and then you'll think, oh yeah, I'll give this technique a crack, particularly like early days. And instead of chasing them, you go down to the reef and you do all the stealth, everything, and then they just swim away and they never come back. And you go, and I still have it so many times where I make, because if a fish swims below you, sometimes that you could duck dive down and go and get a shot into it. always filming, so I like to get nice horizontal shots on pelagics and things like that.
Yeah.
So I still dive down and go through the whole thing, but it's something that and what I keep saying to guys is employ and modify the techniques, because they may not be your cup of tea, but at least if you know it, then you can add your own little bits to it.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Employ it, modify it, and then particularly, our kingies, they're pretty curious fish, and there's so many different pelagics out there in the world. How are your fish going to react to this? And so, it'll be interesting seeing it.
So two of your vids, one's kind of like it's a yellowtail kingfish specific, but it's techniques for most pelagics, and then you've chose possibly one of New Zealand's most iconic fish, the New Zealand snapper, which is a really sort of hard to hunt reef fish, and so you've kind of picked two fish that represent broad groups where there's techniques that apply to a lot of other species.
And with snapper, like some of it is quite New Zealand specific, like obviously snooping over shallow ground and ground baiting. But I do cover off like a few other techniques as well, and like go into spawn and filleting and handling and shot placement and gear requirements and things like that too. All
right. Well, this interview's done a little bit like our book. I mean, our book's called 99 Tips to Get Better at Spearfishing, but there's really like a couple of hundred in there at least. But and I think today, we were covering 5 tips to accelerate through the spearfishing learning curve. I'll just summarise them a little bit. So we had sort of three big tips there for improving your breathing technique. So one was don't overbreathe. And number 2 was say grab a mate and say, can you spot me? Can you keep a watch on me? Number 3 was stay hydrated, which sounds pretty basic, but as we went into, like, some big gains to be made there. Number 4 was like really pay attention to your tides and currents and learn the feeding cycles of the fish in your area. And like you were talking about pressure points and lots of different things, lots of information in here. And the last one we talked about avoiding predatory body language and employing a multitude of techniques to sort of make the most of that. Is that kind of how you'd sort of put it all, Luke?
Yeah, I get every time you say predator now, I just think of the club. So I think that's done. Don't act like a predator.
I believe her words were "Don't be a creep." It made me laugh because here's me and Turbo interviewing this good-looking Hawaiian girl, and she's talking about that. I was laughing, but look, cool. All right, so just quickly, like your videos sort of address a lot of problems guys have in their sort of maybe their first 1 to 2 years of spearfishing, and there's probably a lot more advanced stuff that guys of any level could pick up. But I mean, let's just go quickly through a couple. One of the ones that sort of spiked my interest was your sort of your big overview on equipment, because I know that a lot of guys care a lot about spearfishing equipment, and you invest a lot of money in that part of your spearfishing. It's in our show we cover a little bit off every week about what's in your spearfishing dive bag, but we don't really do a big deep dive into equipment. What do you cover off in that episode?
That one was the hardest one to write for me, because I think it was so long ago that equipment was the thing. When you get into diving, that episode's over an hour long, and it's basically blades and foot pockets, gloves and booties, knives, masks and snorkels, spear guns, floats and float lines, obviously, weight belts, weights, wetsuits, and then a whole big thing on non-essentials, including belt reels and flashes and pole spears and things like that. And I just break everything down and just run through a whole lot.
And obviously it's hard for one man to cover the gamut of spearfishing brands. Are you brand biased?
No, I'm not. I like to try out all sorts of different gear. I went into 2 spearfishing stores that are local to me to film all their different bits and pieces. I know a lot of guys who are really gear obsessed. I think I'm a bit too much of an animal with my gear. I'm kind of like, if it shoots, use it. But however, I have been put onto some different gear lately, like spear guns. My friend actually made up the Derville carbon guns down the South Island there, and he sent me one up to try, and I had quite a bit of fun with that. I kind of, in each of the episodes, well, each of the fish hunting ones as well, I just give an overview of what gear I use and what gear I recommend.
Yeah.
And then have a bit of a talk about like the apprenticeship stage, like using a float line instead of a reel, and how I think you should go onto a reel, especially for kingfish, and obviously the fish hunting techniques I have held off fight fish and in some pretty interesting situations.
Yeah.
Basically just trying to cover the whole thing there. But I got the wife to get a spray tan and made her do the wetsuit because no one wants to see me doing that. So that was all. It was all pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah,
that whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's a little bit of a disappointment for our female fans, Luke. They were hoping to see you do the wetsuit thing.
Oh, I could imagine. Yep. Too bad.
All right, so you've got 5 episodes up now, is that right?
Yep. So the How to Spearfish video series has 5 core episodes.
Okay.
So at the moment that we're speaking, 3 of them are online, and I'm hoping to get the snapper one up by the end of this week. So we're looking at having everything online, all going well, by Christmas 2017.
Cool. So by the time this episode goes live, everything will most likely be up and live.
Yeah, and if there's any updates or anything from there on in, we'll be working on that and just releasing information as we move forward. We've had a bit of requests for other bits and pieces in there, like your crays and things like that. So there's room for me to go out and talk to guys who are experts in different areas, particularly on other species overseas in Australia and things like that as well, and giving some good rundowns for guys.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, awesome. Awesome today chatting with you, Luke. So we've heard a little bit about some of these videos. So there's five core videos, is that right? We've kind of we've talked a little bit about a few of them, but what are they exactly? So we've got the equipment one.
Okay, so episode 1 is a beginner's guide to spearfishing gear. Episode 2 is how to increase your breath hold for spearfishing. Number 3, techniques for spearfishing yellowtail kingfish. 4 is techniques for spearfishing snapper. And the final one at this point in time is a guide to spearfishing around sharks.
Yeah. I remember when we chatted to you the first time, you had some good horror stories about sharks, and there's definitely a big learning curve, and it's probably one of guys' biggest fears. So
that's right.
I'm sure that video will go well. So awesome. Yep. All right. So look, if guys come to noobspearo.com/how to spearfish video, I'll have links to all Luke's videos there, and I believe you've put together a discount code just for listeners. Is that right?
Yep, so for Noob Spearo listeners, I've just put a discount code together for 10% off. And the code is Noob Spearo, just one word.
Yeah.
And just put it in there and it'll be 10%.
Pump it off and get 10%, so wicked. Awesome. And I think if guys have listened through today, they'll know that they're in for a ton of value because you've given us some awesome tips today, Luke. So thanks for joining me, buddy.
Cool. All right, good to talk to you again.
I'll catch you later, man.
That was an amazing session with Luke there. Really, really enjoyed having a deep dive into some of those tips he came up with and just picking his brain about stuff. The hydration stuff I've since looked into more, and it's amazing how much that can affect guys' ability to equalize. Absolutely phenomenal tip, and you can expect more of the same in Luke's video series. It's available at Vimeo on demand. All of these links will be available in the show notes. So if you just pump in to Google Luke Potts, come and find the show notes on noobspearo.com, and I will have links to all of Luke's videos there. And like I say, like in the 5 videos he's got, the run time slightly less than 4 hours. There's enough information in there to keep you happy for the first 3-4 years of your diving. Like it's the sort of stuff that takes you that long to acquire, and it's just going to save years off your learning curve, and I couldn't recommend them highly enough. I'm a big fan. So again, you can come and find the show notes at noobspearo.com and use the code noobspearo when you get there, and you're going to save 10%. No brainer. Alright guys, thanks for listening today, and tune in 2 weeks time. I hope we're going to have Turbo talking about abalone fishery and Matt Madison in the California environment. Catch you later. Sometimes It's time to spend some money on yourself. And there's nothing like a new spear gun. That's right. Head over to spearfishing.com.au and check out a big range of spear guns. Get tempted and read the customer reviews and really sort of have a look at what they've got to offer. Turbo and I love the Mani-Sub roller guns. You can buy them at spearfishing.com.au. Go in and check out the spear guns. If you do decide to buy something, pump in the code NoobSpearo at checkout and save $20 on every purchase over $200. If you do have problems, they have a hassle-free returns policy, cheap shipping rate worldwide, and a price beat guarantee for Australia. You can also check out the stores in Brisbane, Sydney or Melbourne and get help from more than 40 underwater experts. Online, they also have live help. You can talk to people online and ask any questions you might have about products. So head over to spearfishing.com.au and check out a huge range of spear guns.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. It's been a cracker. We always love bringing these to you. But Shrek, you got a couple of things on your mind.
Shalom, Turbo. Yep, I would love it if people would head over to noobspearo.com and sign on to the Floater email newsletter. It's our monthly release that gives you details.
Monthly release, the Floater. So bad.
It gives a bit of a quick update on what's happening on the blog and in Noob Spearo's world. And you also get a couple of bonuses when you sign up. You get the Dive Day checklist and 10 tips to become a better Spearo.
You got to get that Dive Day checklist. It's got a photoshopped image of Shrek on it. We've pulled in his guts a bit, made him, and he's put out his shoulders a bit. We actually paid for that. Mine's hanging over my bed head. I look at it every morning when I get up. You got to get yourself a copy of it. That's the only way I start my day.
Thanks for listening and putting up with us today, guys. Talk to you in another fortnight. See ya.
See ya.